Hello. Welcome back to the Mondovi Line. We're here at the west side of AIO, Wisconsin, where my layout loops from staging through AIO and around into Strum, Wisconsin. This is where I'm going to stand for the video. We're going to try a little different thing today. We asked for questions, didn't ask me anything. And I have a clipboard here now with a list of questions. So we are going to read some questions, answer some questions, and show some examples in between. So let's get started. First question I have comes from David. It says, how did you pick the moment in time that you want to recreate? How did you research the scenery to be true to that era? So my layout is set in the late 1950s. I wanted to pick a time period that was just previous to me being born. And also the first vehicle I ever drove was a 1960 Ford F100. So I wanted to be able to do 1959 with the new model year so I could have the truck that I used to drive when I was in high school. Also the 1950s because I wanted to do first generation diesels. Now, one of the simplest ways to set the era is the vehicles. So I make sure that all the vehicles that I have on the layout are pre-1959. That includes trucks and any maintenance type vehicles. So one question I get fairly often is, why did I choose Western Wisconsin, or Wisconsin, for my layout? I'm from Chicago, grew up there, but we vacationed in Wisconsin every year. Had relatives that lived in Wisconsin. We had relatives that retired and moved to Wisconsin. And we would drive from Chicago to Northwest Wisconsin. So we would always see Chicago Northwestern. We would see Milwaukee Road. We would see Sioux Line. We would see the Burlington along the Mississippi River. So that is kind of the railroads of my childhood. Now, Dave says, so many of us model scenes we grew up with. Is that the case with the Mondovi Line? I did not grow up or even ever see the Mondovi Line my entire life until I built this layout. But I saw many short lines, branch lines, abandoned lines, or just Wisconsin rails that were in the weeds. We used to go to a resort on the Mississippi River near Fountain City, and I think it was the Burlington that ran behind the resort. And we used to, when we were kids, pre-teenagers, when we heard the freight train coming, my brothers and I would run across this field and stop next to the tracks and stand 10, 20 feet from the tracks and watch these long freight trains rumble by. And that was kind of a memory that I have, and wanted to build that type of thing into my layout. So why the Mondovi Line? Well, I had never heard of it. It's a short branch line that ran 37 miles from Fairchild, Wisconsin, and it ran west to Mondovi, passing through several small towns on the way, and then ended at Mondovi. It was gone by 1975, torn up. I was 14 years old at that point, so I had never seen it, never been there. It's now an ATV trail. So when I was looking to do a layout, my father had a large collection of books and model railroad items that I inherited. One of the books in his collection is by Arlen Colby, and it's called The Mondovi Line. So that's the first time that I had heard of it, and I started reading through this. And one of the questions I have here is from John, who is from that area. And John wanted to know if I've been in touch with Arlen Colby, who wrote this book, and I have. I've chatted with him online several times. And what other sources did I use in planning and building my layout? So I did a lot of research on the area. I have a large collection of Chicago Northwestern Historical Society magazines upstairs, along with books on the Omaha, which is Chicago, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Omaha, which was owned up until 1957, I think, by the Northwestern before it was completely absorbed. And the Mondovi Line was actually an Omaha branch. I have other research I did online. I started saving pictures, photographs, anything I could find. I went to the historical societies in the area up there. And the reason was the shape of the room and what I had. I figured out that it met all the needs that I had. I wanted to run a point-to-point instead of a layout that went around in a loop and just kept going in circles. I wanted to actually do something with the layout. So I wanted to operate it. And a lot of the information was in this book, and the track plans and everything I needed were pretty much laid out, and I just modified them for my needs. So like I said, the Mondovi Line started from Fairchild, and I built a staging yard, and the first town along the line would be AIO. The first town of any size would be AIO, and I'm able to operate in there, loop around this peninsula here. I'm building the town of Strum and loop around, and I'm building the town of Oliva, and then Mondovi and the end of the line. So Paul over in Australia asked me, how do I operate the layout? Are you using waybills, switch lists, etc.? And I am operating using switch lists. I initially started operating just totally ad hoc. I would pull out 8, 10 cars, and just when I got to a town, I would say, oh, I'll put 2 there, I'll put 2 there, I'll pull and put 1 there. And it just didn't have what I was looking for. Matt Forcum has something called Ops Buddy, and I saw his videos and some information on that, and he sent me a copy of that as a Google Doc, and I modified it. So I use switch lists. So I have a switch list, and I print out, and it's got approximately a page for each town on the layout, and each industry is listed. And you have what car you're setting out, if it's a load or an empty, where it's going, which, say, spot at a location. If I have 4 doors over there on the United Milk Products building, I can say exactly what's going where. And it's done with a 20-sided die. So there's an online, so it's pretty much different every time, the probabilities, and you set the probabilities in the Ops Buddy document. So what I mean by that is, if I have a industry that I know isn't switched very often, for example, the stockyards on the Mondovi Line were only switched on Tuesdays, then I know to set the probability low that it's ever going to hit that. But say the Land O'Lakes Creamery in Mandovia is switched every time, or the cannery is switched every time, then I set the probability higher. So if you roll between 1 and 18, then yeah, you're going to operate and switch that industry. If you rolled 19 or 20, you're not. And you can adjust those to different industries, to different stops on the industry, to how many cars you're going to come out with. So am I going to do, I have 4 doors on the United Milk Products. Am I going to operate all 4 spots that turn, or say 2 boxcars, 1 reefer, or 1 gondola of coal for their powerhouse and 1 reefer and 1 boxcar? It's different every time. But it works really nicely. Look it up, Matt Forkum's Ops Buddy. So Eric asked me about how exact I try to be with details to the prototype. And I am not a rivet counter. I am not going for 100%. If there was a lumber yard in the town, I built a lumber yard. It may not be exactly like it. A lot of the reasons why is there's a limited number of photographs. A lot of them are black and white, so I don't know what color they are. Maybe there were 3 grain elevators in one town and I had room for 2. Every town had a pickle salting station, and I really like the pickle salting station, so I made sure to put one in each town. It may not be the exact footprint of the old one, but it's there. So it's started out as prototype and became more of influenced by the prototype. And if something comes up where it's not just easy, but worth getting is more exact than I do. The accuracy is not super important to me. I have 3 oil dealers in Strum. Because of location and the room that I have in the layout, they may not be laid out the same way, but I will be able to operate all 3 because there were 3 in the town. But in AIO, I have 1 oil dealer. There were more than 1 in the town, but I didn't have room for them, so I had to selectively compress or cut out, delete. And that's fine too. I think people who were familiar with the line would be able to look at it and recognize locations, recognize industries, recognize the track plan. So let's see. Next question comes from Joseph. Most of us have to make tough decisions on what to include on a layout and what to get cut. Is there a specific structure, industry, or location that was a must-have when planning your layout? So these are some of what I just mentioned. I definitely wanted specific industries. I wanted the pickle stations in each town. I wanted the lumber yards in each town. I wanted the canneries. Each town had a main industry. For example, in AIO, the United Milk Products was their main employer, and I definitely needed to have that. In the same way, in Mandovia, I really needed the Land O'Lakes Creamery. So here's the United Milk Products condenser. It's an ITLA kit that I modified to resemble the original, but it's got 4 loading doors and a long loading dock, and it has coal right there and a powerhouse. So I definitely wanted it because the smokestack, and this is from Altoona Model Works, I think. It was the large landmark in town, and it's still there today, as is this building. It's now a wedding venue and a brew pub. And I wanted a canning company in AIO, which is down here on the end. And there's the pickle salting station. Now down here at the end of the layout in Mondovi, I have the Land O'Lakes Creamery and the cannery. Now this goes to Joseph's question. The Land O'Lakes Creamery was actually about a block over from where it's located, and this track here would have gone on a 45-degree angle right through the wall, and the creamery was set at a 45-degree angle to the town. Obviously I couldn't do that because I have a wall there. Cannery had multiple buildings. It had 2 large buildings that were across each side of the tracks from it, and I was only able to get 1 in there. Now coming into Mondovi, there was a couple of tracks here that came out on a 45-degree angle, and they would have gone right into the aisle where I'm standing here. The stockyard would have been on one of those. The engine house and turntable would have been on one of those angle tracks too. Now, there was also I think it was a feed mill fertilizer plant, co-op type thing that was on that angle track later on too, and there's no room for that, so that had to be compressed and deleted. The turntable went away in 1957, I think, so I wouldn't have had a turntable or an engine house at all on the layout. So some things got deleted. Some things got moved. For example, I'll slowly turn here. Down at the end here, there was a spur there that ended at the Buffalo River. I put an engine house there, just because I wanted to. Now, Gary over in Australia was asking me, how do I stage the scenes on my railroad? I like to follow, Boomer is one for this, if you follow Boomer Dioramas, and also several of the other guys on the podcasts that I've listened to on Second Section or on ATLP. They talk about story, and I like my scenes to tell a story. So I do that with the vehicles. I do that with figures. I get a lot of figures from Woodland Scenics and from mini prints, and try to set up a scene so I can tell a story. Other thing that I started doing is I started putting the figures glued onto a small square of acetate so they're movable. So every once in a while I just take a scene and I move it to another part of the layout. I move vehicles around. There may be a car parked at the diner during one operating session because it's lunchtime. That same car may be at the Co-op Equity another time because that's where the guy works. So I like to tell stories with scenes. Let me see if I can show you a couple. So here at the Reed Murdoch Pickle Salting Station in Osseo, I have a truck here who's loading pickles out. I have a gentleman on the dock here who was unloading salt from the boxcar. I moved the boxcar so you could see him. And then in back I have some workers working there. I also have a stack of pickle barrels that I move around. They may be delivered at different times or gone different places. Here at the O&N Lumberyard in Osseo, currently there's a person loading up the back of a car, and we got employees standing there waving to the car going by. A couple of guys over here chatting with the truck that they're loading. That's all changeable. And if you go in this corner, I have a farmhouse scene, and I don't know if I can get close enough for you to see, but there's a mini print mini-me of Dan Pugach playing his Gretsch guitar. Johnny Cash, who's sometimes sitting on top of a Orange Blossom Special Seaboard boxcar, is sitting on the top step listening to Dan play guitar, and there's a couple of their friends sitting there next to them listening. So that's a scene that I hope tells a story. Over here on the other side of Osseo, I have a little work crew working. There's a truck and then 3 guys working with a wheelbarrow and a front end loader. And I move that around different portions of the rail yard when they're doing some work. And I had this scene in my mind for quite a while before I built it. And it's a speed shop in Osseo. Now, there's a little creative license here because I don't know if there was a speed shop at this side of town or a gas station or anything, but my younger brother is a car guy, so he's got his own speed shop on my layout. And we got that 57 Oldsmobile convertible, and they have full service. So there's the story of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attendants around that car. And we got some race cars, and we got some junk cars. We got this turquoise Victress, which is my brother's show car. And then we're going to be telling some stories over here too. Haven't got to it yet, but there's going to be a hobo camp underneath the highway overpass. It's in the future. Now over here in Mondovi, we have a gentleman just leaning back against the wall of that little yellow utility shack, and there's a couple of cats, and he's just hanging out. And we got a couple of guys waiting for a train to come in with their dog underneath the switch tower. And over here we have a guy with a broken down car, or maybe he's showing his engine to his friend, the trooper, the cop there. While he's doing that, we have some Railway Express agency work going on. Bunch of old timers sitting at the depot talking. And here we have Daisy on her bicycle. Her friend drove by in his Buick wagon, and they're chatting now. Now, on the same topic, Mark asked me if I have the story in mind before I model the scene, or do I model the scene and make it into a story? And it's more the latter. I kind of start a scene, and I say, well, this could use this could use that. I have some extra figures from Woodland Scenics. Let me try that. Oh, I have a pickup truck that'll work there. Let me grab my Mini Metals truck and put it there. So I kind of get the scenic out first, and then kind of build a story inside the little scene. I think of a postage stamp idea that we've talked about online with Boomer. That whole, here's 1 square foot, scenic the heck out of it, detail it, make it a story, and then move on to another square foot over here, another square foot over there. So that's how I do that. Now, Chris wants to know what my favorite industry to switch and operate is. That's a good question. Let me take you for a walk, and we'll look for one. I'll have to say my favorite is United Milk Products Condensery, and that's because it has a varied amount of cars that come in and out. It's pretty busy. So they condense milk and can them, canned milk. So you have boxcars that come in with empty tin cans. You have boxcars that come in with printed cardboard cases flattened out. You have gondolas that come in with coal for their power plant. They ship the milk out in reefers at times, sometimes in boxcars. They also have side products that they would make. So they make cheese and butter, and those would go out in refrigerated cars. Now I have 4 doors there, so I could switch, actually 5 doors. I could say that boxcar goes on door number 1 and the reefer goes on door number 5. If my switch list says that we're not going to pull those cars, yet I'm going to pull 2 cars from the cannery, my operation just got more interesting, because I have to pull these cars out of the way to get those from the canning company. But if there's a car at the salting station, that'll have to get respotted back as well. So I could come in here and have to do multiple turns to pull a car out, put cars back, respot the cars where they go. And I find that to be interesting. Now in Mondovi, I have the same concept. Here at the Land O'Lakes Creamery, it's the same thing. We got box cars coming in with cans or with cases. The butter has to go into their, printed boxes, so they can get an entire boxcar of just paper material, cardboard cases, etc. And they ship out in boxcars, they ship out in reefers. There's 4 doors on that one as well. And that's, again, a long spur that there could be cars here at the Co-op Equity. There could be cars here at the flour mill. There could be cars here at the Mondovi Grain and Feed. There could be cars here at the Limeworks loading platform, and there could be cars here at the Pickle Station. And depending on how the switch list says, some of these cars will be in the way and have to be moved out, have to be off-spotted, have to be respotted, or they all come in or they all come out together. It's the roll of the dice. So that spur along the wall is my favorite in Mondovi. Now, I really don't have a favorite yet in Strum or Oliva. It's still being built. I'm leaning towards the feed mill in Strum because it's a stub-ended spur, and it seems to be a little more interesting. Oliva, I haven't operated a whole lot in yet because I'm still building it, so I don't have that one yet. All right, let's see. Bob in Philadelphia, he wants to know what building kit gave me the most trouble and which one was the easiest. Let me see if I can answer that. You know, for the most difficulty, it's not a building per se. That water tower there is Tichy, T-I-C-H-Y, and it gave me so much trouble and so many fits. The kit was missing parts, there were broken parts, there were parts that broke while I was trying to put it together. It's a really nice water tower when I was done, but man, oh man, I will never build another one of those. The solution is Walthers makes a water tower already built. All I did was spray paint it, letter it, and stick it in the scenery. Whether it was fulfilling or not is not the question. It's fight my battles elsewhere. So this would be the easiest. Buy it, take it out of the box, and stick it in the layout. Now, I really like Craftsman kits. Fine Scale Miniatures makes amazing kits, or they used to. They cost a car payment, and I really don't have the time or money to build those. But other wood kits like American Model Builders, Campbell's, Foss Scale Models, Jason Jensen, really like that kind of stuff. Now, this Pickle Station is tricky. So the curved pickle vats, the way I figured out how to do it was they're straight wooden strips, and I soaked them in water, wrapped them around a aluminum pipe that was the same size, rubber banded them overnight and let them dry. And then they dried, they were already in a circular shape. And then using super glue, I glued them around the frames. So they're quite a little trick, and you need to be really, really patient. I have to be in the right headspace to get those just right. They're fun, but they are definitely challenging. Now, I found that the simplest kit is one that was already built by somebody else. So this church is a Campbell kit that my older brother built back in the 70s, and my dad had it and I had it, and it was in a box, and by the time I got to the layout, it was in a box in several parts, but they were all there. So just a matter of gluing the assemblies back together and detailing it. So I wanted to make sure that I have something on my layout from other family members. So this church was built by my older brother, Doug. And I haven't decided where this is going to go yet, but I have a couple of these Campbell Brett's Breweries. See if you can see it out there, and that's just sitting there for now. I built one, and my younger brother Donald built one. And in this case, this Mondovi grain and feed elevator was built by my father, and this warehouse next to it here was also built by my father. Obviously, it wasn't built as Mondovi grain and feed. I repainted and detailed them, but the kits were done. And this grain storage building here, my dad built, which was actually originally part of a coal mine, Walther's plastic coal mine, and I added the wood around it and the signs and the pigeons and the painting and the weathering. But so this pretty much started out as from my father's layout. So I like to have that on here as well as a remembrance. Okay, Alex wanted to know how often I operate the railroad. I get down here and operate it maybe once a week, twice a week, to a full operating session could take up to 2 hours solo. His second question was, do I operate solo or have crew members? Nobody has been down here to see the layout except for me, except for family and friends. But I've had no model railroaders down here. No one else has operated it yet. I have one throttle that I operate with. So if I set up a train ahead of time, it takes a little while to get the switch list filled out and set up. And then I block the train in the staging yard individually for each town. The first town I run into would be on the front of the train. The second town next, all the way down to Mondovi at the end of the train. And every single train in the Mondovi line always had a caboose. So I run a caboose. Also, every train on the Mondovi line had a less than carload boxcar. And that would be if you're ordering something, but you're not going to fill a whole car. Let's say you order 5 washing machines for your hardware store. They'd come on the LCL car, get unloaded at the platform by the depot, and then the agent would call you and you'd come pick them up. It's not a industry thing where you're bringing an entire car to a lumber yard full of lumber. This is just less than carload, LCL. So every train had an LCL boxcar, and I used the green and yellow Omaha Road boxcars that were everywhere in Wisconsin at the time. And they run at the end of the train in front of the caboose. So when I operate the railroad, every town has a platform by the depot, and the caboose and the LCL car get dropped off at the platform while the rest of the town is switched out. Sometimes I don't have a lot of time, but I still want to run my railroad. So I'll come down and just do one town. And I won't even use a switch list. I'll just come down and say I got 6 boxcars going to AIO, and I'll just pull them in and decide where they're going to go, just to spend 15, 20, 30 minutes operating a town. If I'm operating Mondovi at the end of the line, which is over the wall here, it's about 75 feet of mainline track to get there. And I run it at a 10 mile an hour bad track, pretty much, because it was in the dirt. The track was in the dirt at the end. It takes a while just to get to the other side of the layout before I even switch out. Sometimes I'll switch out the entire Mondovi town and then leave the train there and come back another day and return back to the yards, pulling all the empties on my way from the towns that I had switched on my way across the layout. So there's many ways to do it. Lastly, some guy named Heath asked a bunch of questions. Who or what was your biggest influence in model railroading? And I'm going to have to say my father. My father had a layout in the basement of the home we lived in Chicago when I was born. I was born in 1961, and the layout was already there. He and his uncle, who was a longtime Chicago Northwestern employee, had a fairly large layout in the basement, definitely 1950s, not just era, but actually it was built in the 50s. So it wasn't like we have today, which a lot of people refer to the golden era, which we are living in right now. Hard shell plaster painted green house paint was the scenery. Spaghetti bowl of track. But they ran beautiful custom built brass locomotives, all steam, and they would buy brass locomotives and custom paint them to their own layout. So as a little kid, I got to watch that train run. And then when we moved to the suburbs out of Chicago and lived in Niles, Illinois, my dad built a 24 by 12 approximately layout. And it was a continuous running, lots of track work, big yard. So I got to see that being built and help out when I got older and operate that when I got older. So by the time they sold that house in the early 80s, I was 20 years living in houses with model railroads. So that was a big influence, and I took a lot of what I learned. Now, that was then. Who's my influence now? And I follow a lot of you guys on YouTube and on Facebook, and learn a lot. This layout I'm working on now is really the first one that I got this serious about. I've built 3 or 4, maybe 5 smaller layouts, other layouts that never got far enough because of moving around or whatever. But I follow and watch the videos for the usual suspects that you guys know about, Boomer and Tom Klomoski, and just the list goes on and on and on. Fantastic, talented people, Seaboard Central. I watch these videos all the time, and not just HO. I like to watch the Fairmount subdivision, which is an O scale, and I like to watch Norm's O scale stuff. Norm Charbonneau, I think his last name is. Amazing stuff. But I can pull some information and learn stuff from a lot of places. So that's podcasts. Andy and Mike's podcast has been very helpful, hearing you guys on there, and Ray's ATLP is amazing also. And I get to meet new people online that way and follow them as well. So I would have to say that the internet and YouTube has completely changed my modeling. So let me see if I have any more questions here. Heath asked some smart aleck questions, but we're going to skip those. But he did say, what was my biggest mistake or my biggest success on the layout? Well, since the layout is only about half done, I think I got lots of room for more mistakes. And I'm not even sure it's a mistake, but I'll tell you what I would do differently. Is the layout is 1x3 framing, and the roadbed, or the base of the layout, is 2-inch foam glued directly to the wood. So there's no plywood level. There's just the 2-inch foam, and then there's 1/4-inch cork. I used, you can see it's in different places. You can see where it's under the roadbed here, but not here. But there's 1/4-inch cork. It's floor underlayment. And it gives me a good sound barrier. It's not real important, but it helps. But it gives me some bite. So things, if I'm nailing the track in before I ballast it, it's got something to hold on to. The problem or the mistake is the underside is just foam. And I started looking at not switch machines, but even manual turnout control. There's nothing to screw anything into or to, it's going to be a difficult thing. I have to figure out what to do. So if I was going to do it differently, I think I would have put 1/4-inch plywood down first and then put the foam on top of that. So I don't know if that's a mistake, but it's definitely something I would have done differently. I think the background, the backgrounds, I might have been a little more patient putting them up. There's some places where the seams are obvious, and it's hard to see right here, but there's some bubbles where it didn't take to the backdrop wood. Masonite, that's the word I'm looking for, masonite. So I think I would have maybe done that a little differently. One thing I'm glad, in success, I don't know, but let's just say one thing that I'm glad I did is I listened to people who said, finish the room before you start the layout. So all the electrical was redone in the basement. We put in a whole new electrical service box. We rewired the entire basement. We sealed the walls. We put up 2x4 stud walls with insulation. We put up outlets more often than we thought we would need. So there's lots of outlets in this main room here, and in the room behind me, which has the staging yard in it. More lighting than you think you need. So I have LED 4-foot lights with 3 different color levels that were put in, and I actually had the electrician come back and put more in different places because I wasn't happy with the amount of light. Maybe my eyes are old, but it helps to have it brighter, I think. Better for photography, better for my modeling. And the floor, I put in black puzzle piece rubber floor because I'm standing in here a lot. The ceiling, I got a sprayer and I sprayed the ceiling. After cleaning it, I sprayed the ceiling white. Ceiling is too low to put in a drop ceiling. It would be too claustrophobic, so I painted it white. I almost painted it black to make it disappear. Some people do that. I think that might have been a good choice, but I'm happy with the white ceiling. But do your room completely. And the other thing that I would have done differently would be I would have had a company come in and fix my foundation. I have a 100-year-old house, and in certain instances, I get water in the basement still. Not a lot, but I have to lift up the rubber tile floor and run a fan the next day. It happens once every 3 or 4 months. We've done things to fix that. If you need gutters, do it before. That was one thing I did wrong. We now have gutter work and new downspouts and foundation work and leveling out the landscape around the house so the water flows away. Definitely do that first. So let's see. Oh, I have one more question. This is from Alex, who says, did I see a Doctor Who phone booth on your layout? Why, yes, you did. I have a TARDIS that I built. I don't even remember where I got this from. It was a kit I think I found on eBay. But I built it for fun, and every once in a while I'll pick it up and put it somewhere else. There. And I'll just move it around and see if people see it or not. I like to have a little fun when people come and visit. So there's a TARDIS for them to find. I have little kids come over sometimes and I say, see if you can find Bigfoot. So I have a Bigfoot in the trees and I move him around, and sometimes I forget where he is. And there's a moose in there. Where is it? There he is. So I like to put things in the layout so the kids holds their interest and they look for things. So I think that's all I have. So one of the questions was, what are your future plans? So let's end with that. So I'm gonna make some more operation videos. I just got these 3 locomotives taken care of. These are 3 old Proto 2000s that I bought 25 years ago. And this GP9 1719, GP7 1558, and GP7 1518 now have sound DCC LED lighting, and I'll be using them for operating. They have keep alives. They run beautifully smooth. I've been telling myself that I'm not going to scenic the staging yard, but I think I'm going to put a background up there, and I might someday do a little scenic work in there. I have been, as I mentioned, looking at turnout control. This is my proof of concept. It'll work, but I need to do it differently. So I have a wire onto the nib of the Pico switch. That's fluorescent wire. It's too big. I got some piano wire I'm going to use to replace that with. Because it's just foam, you can see once you put a hole in the foam, like I tried a couple out here, you're kind of screwed. So I used a piece of evergreen tubing to run through there so the wire smoothly runs through, and the wire is bent on a 45 underneath and used as the fulcrum to move it. I took a dowel rod, drilled a hole in a dowel rod, ran the angled wire through the dowel rod, ran it back through the fascia, cut it off, and put on a wooden knob, and you pull and push. It works. So we're gonna see if I can figure out a little better way of do that, and we're gonna do that with the entire layout over time. And this is the end of the scenic area. This is where the staging yard is. I'm building a view block, so when you're over here and you look towards the yard, you don't see the workshop behind it. So I started adding trees and a lot more stuff. So that's one of my future projects. Big future project, finish the town of Strum. It's gonna start with the farm scene, and I'm gonna work my way, scenicking it all the way down to the end. There's going to be a nice view block right here, be kind of built up with trees. And on the other side of the peninsula, the view block will go all the way across, and this is the town of Oliva. And I have this whole entire area to scenic. So it's like having 2 complete layouts to still build here. And then down on the end there, where that curve between Mondovi on the left and Oliva on the right, we're gonna build my parents' resort and motel. It was in Chautauqua, Wisconsin, which was a little distance away from here, but we're gonna put it there anyhow. So the last future project is the end of the peninsula here. And this is going to be a heavily forested scene with the Buffalo River. The whole entire Mondovi Line followed for most of the way the Buffalo River, crossed over several times back and forth each side of it. So I'm going to have a wooden trestle on each curved trestle with the river running underneath, across, and out again. And like I say, it's going to be all forested and hills and little Wisconsin fauna. So that's probably going to be the last project I get to. It'll be quite a ways off.